Hello friends, welcome. Welcome to another lecture targeting the upcoming RBI Grade B exams. Today we are going to do a very interesting thing. We are going to look at how to approach the descriptive questions in management section. As you know that RBI this year has changed the pattern of the exam. It has introduced an additional descriptive section inside the paper of finance and ESI. So now your paper would be 50% objective and 50% descriptive rather than 100% objective, right? Okay. From that day onwards, there had been many requests that have been coming to us regarding how do we approach the descriptive questions, how do we answer the descriptive questions. Ravi sir had already done a lecture on this regarding the finance section's descriptive questions handling yesterday. Hope you have gone through it. If you have not, please go through it. It would give you a clear-cut idea about how to approach the descriptive questions in finance section. Today, we are going to do the same for management section. We will look at how to approach descriptive questions in management section. Okay. Now, so today's broad agenda would be seeing what are the kinds of questions that used to come in previous year's paper when RBI used to conduct a descriptive paper for its grade B vacancies. Yes, RBI used to conduct descriptive paper. You know, till 2016 or so, the RBI grade B paper used to be fully descriptive. It was the 3 to 4 years back when they changed it to a fully objective paper. Now this year they have mixed both of them, right? They have kept 50% descriptive, 50% objective. Now when we look at those previous year papers where it used to take only descriptive, that would give us an idea about the kind of questions that they might ask. Also, we will be picking one topic out of it and answer it completely thoroughly. And that would be a sample answer for you. When I would write it and present it in front of you, you would get an idea, okay, this is the way we should be approaching a management question if the question is descriptive in nature. So, understand one thing very clearly. Whether it is a descriptive question, whether it is an objective question, does not matter. Your concept clarity needs to be 100% in both the cases. And that is what I would show you. The topic in which I would be writing the essay on, or I will not say essay, but writing the answer on, you'd see that particular topic, I would give you an idea about the topic first. So it is advisable if you stop the lecture or pause the lecture and try and write the answer to that particular question by yourself before looking at the answer that I give you, right? So that would do what? You know what that would do? That would essentially create an understanding in you that this is the way how you would approach and this is the way how I am approaching. If there are things that you think you can learn from me about the approach of writing a descriptive answer, then you would learn that. If there are things that you need to improve, you would improve on that. So that comparison would help you, right? So what we will do essentially is that I'll give you first the most of the questions that have come in the descriptive papers in RBI grade B in the previous year, and then I'll move on and pick up a particular topic on which I'm going to write an answer on. But before writing an answer, I would be teaching you the concepts of those topics, right? And you'd see if you are good in the concepts, how easy it is to write a descriptive answer to. So there is really nothing to panic if you know the concepts well, and that is what we would see today. Okay, so let's start off with first the previous year's questions. You see, I'll read these questions so that you understand the context in which these questions were asked. Corporate governance and corporate social responsibility are the twins to shine a corporate entity? Discuss. So in such a question, what you need to do is that you need to show whether corporate governance and corporate social responsibility is so intrinsically linked. They are so intrinsically linked that they can be called twins or not. Okay, right. So it's a qualitative question, you understand. So see at the nature of this question. This question is qualitative in nature, meaning that your concepts would be required to draw a relationship between it, and at the end you would need to conclude whether you agree they are twins to shine a corporate entity or not. Okay, so qualitative questions. Next, distinguish between verbal and non-verbal communication. Now this was a direct quantitative kind of question. Now when I say quantitative, I do not mean number based question. I mean that if you know the data, you can draw parallels and differences between them. Obviously here your knowledge would only be sufficient to answer the question. Here your ability, obviously you need a little bit of articulation skill here too, but in the first kind of question you can see that your ability to articulate well would be very, very important. Next, distinguish between directing and controlling. So this is the POSDC: planning, organizing, staffing, directing and controlling. And in directing and controlling in the functions of management, what are the differences? So the nature of the question, if you look at, was same as this one, because any distinguish between or difference between question, your data, your knowledge would be enough to answer that. A successful leader is always an effective leader. Do you agree with this statement? So as you can understand, this had been made red because I am going to choose this topic for writing an essay on. And such an interesting topic this is. I chose this particular topic because this was I found that this would be one of the most challenging questions for you to answer, and therefore I thought that I would be writing on this so that you understand the nitty-gritties of writing. Now, if you look at this, successful leader is always an effective leader. Do you agree with this statement? So, first of all, you need to know about successful and effective leader. You need to relate them, and on the basis of the relation that you draw, you have to agree with this statement or disagree with this statement, right? So, the nature of this question is similar to the first one, isn't it? The nature of this question is similar to the first one. Next. Explain in brief the concept and goals of human resource development, right? Again, a direct concept based question where if you have the knowledge, you can answer. Next, outline the role of incentives in building up employee morale. Now, this is important. See, yes, this is mostly concept. I mean, if you have that data with you, if you have that knowledge with you, you can answer it. But then when you'll have to outline the role of incentives in building employee morale, you can also use examples, you can also use your own ideas and arguments to write the answer or to make the answer better than others, right? So that scope was there in this particular question. Next. Explain the role of information technology in communication. Again, a very generic question, right? And understand that yes, some questions needed specified knowledge. For example, the effective and successful leader wala question, or directing and controlling, or role of incentives. But some questions are generic also in terms of information technology in communication. This is a generic question. A little bit of data from your studies and you can really write a good answer in this. Next, distinguish between authority and responsibility. Now, if you do not know in reality how they are distinguished, then it would be very difficult. You will be very hard pressed to write an answer that would justify the question's importance. So, explain the term corporate governance. Again, a very direct generic question on corporate governance. If you have learned corporate governance, you can write it. Now look at the difference between these two questions. These two questions were also about, this question was also on corporate governance and CSR. This question is also on corporate governance, but this question would require different approach from your side, and this question would require different approach from your side. This question, if you list points, that would be enough. Here you will have to make a connection, right? So, they have said that some questions would be 10 markers, some question would be 15 markers. If I were them, for a question such as this, I would give 15 marks. For a question such as this, I would give 10 marks. Does not mean that they cannot ask, a question such as these in a 10-mark one. They can ask that too, but I'm just giving you an idea. Next, explain in brief the concept of control and communication. Now, your linkages of control and communication. Now, this is important. See, this seems to be a very direct question, but it is not. Because here communication's role in the function of control. See, management has 5 functions: planning, organizing, staffing, development, control. Now, in controlling function, how communication plays an important role is something that it is asking. So, again, it's a linkage kind of question. So, whenever there is a linkage kind of question, your ability to draw a multifaceted connection from one topic to another topic is important. And that is something that you would be doing in this question. Next, briefly discuss the different styles of leadership. Briefly discuss the different styles of leadership. Again, if you have an idea about all the different styles of leadership, you can list them and you can talk about them. So, this is again a direct question. So, your knowledge, if you have knowledge on that, then you would be able to answer this clearly. Briefly discuss the different styles. Oh, I have just repeated it. Sorry. Next, sound organization is an essential prerequisite of efficient management. Explain. Now, again, a question that would require you to impress your thought, express your arguments in a well articulated manner, right? So, it's something of an argument that the question maker has done. You will have to say whether he is right in making that argument. So, if sound organization is an essential prerequisite, if you think so, then how it is something that you should be portraying through your answer, right? Next, what are the major differences between autocratic, democratic and abdicative styles of leadership? So, you should be knowing about these styles, and you should be knowing about Kurt Lewin's leadership model, so that you can attempt an answer to this question. If you don't, then you would be hard pressed in answering this question. So, again, a direct question, not like the last one where it was an implied question, a question which had a lot of implication, where your own idea would have mattered a lot, but a direct question, but again, you need knowledge for that. Explain the terms authority and responsibility. If you see, these two questions came in 2 different years. These two questions came in 2 different years, but they were basically, same question, right? Next, what is delegation of authority? How can delegation be made effective? Now, this is also important. This is a question purely based on concept, but if you see, this opens up a lot of doors and windows for you to improvise, to make the answer look good by introducing your examples, introducing your own ideas inside it. Obviously, you cannot create your ideas and put it in here. You will have to create your ideas and example relevant to the theories you are discussing. That is also important. Next, discuss the role of communication in an organization. What are the barriers to effective communication? If you have done your management syllabus well, you know that these are pointers that we study in our management syllabus clearly, right? There is a section called barriers to effective communication where we study it. So, if you have studied it, if you have understood it, if you know it, this should be a cakewalk answer for you, right? Okay, so you see that there were 2 kinds of questions that have been repeating. One was the direct kind of questions, right? One was the direct kind of question where your knowledge would have been sufficient to answer. Another was the indirect or the implied kind of question where the implication of a statement was asked. What is your opinion on it was asked, right? So, these were a little tricky in terms of here your ability to connect a concept to an argument would be very important, right? Here you need to only state, but here only statement of facts or statement of concepts would not do. You will have to move one step ahead and create an argument out of it. Okay, right? So, this is the question that we have chosen. As you know, Now, before answering this question, we should have an idea about successful leader and effective leader. Now, those who have studied with me, they already know the difference. They already have an idea about it. I will repeat it. I will revise it for you so that you have an idea that this is what successful leadership is. This is what effective leadership is. And then you pause the lecture and attempt to write the answer to this particular question, and then resume the video and look at the answer that I have attempted to write in this particular, and see whether whether that answer is effective or not, whether you could have attempted and have written such an answer or a better answer maybe, right? Okay, so let's look at the concepts first. With successful and effective leadership concept, I'll also relate it to you. I'll tell you a story, and I'll also relate it to you to a very important concept, another third concept, which will not use for the answer, but I'll just, for the sake of so that you know it, I'll tell you. Now, successful versus effective leader. Now, this whole concept was consolidated by Lutherans on the basis of Bass's transformational leadership model. Okay. So Bass in 1985 or 86 gave transformational leadership concept, and in 91 or 92 Fred Lutheran, on the basis of what Bass said and then researching, he put up a research. I'll talk about the research in a moment. He put up that research and created this model, consolidating his and Bass's idea, created this model. So what he said was that you attempt a leadership, you attempt something, okay? A leader attempts to act as a leader. So from that attempt, there is a resultant behavior. He acts in a certain way, and that certain way might be successful as well as unsuccessful. Now, if it is successful, there can be two kinds of successful resultant behavior. One is effective, another is ineffective. Now, from this consolidation only, you would have an idea that effective leader and a successful leader is not always the same. I mean, successful leader is always not effective. You know this now from this diagram. So if you have studied this diagram with me, you would know that, okay, successful leader is not always effective leader. But what is the background to it, I'll tell you in a moment. But with this, I will relate to you with a very relevant, contemporary, modern concept, and that is also a part, specifically a part of this year's course syllabus, and that is Goleman's EQ. Now, Goleman borrowed from this effective leadership idea of Lutheran and created a separate sort of theory based on that. He said, how does a leader become effective? The first level, he said, is self-awareness, that he should know what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, where he can do good, where he cannot do so good, and then he should self-regulate. He should assert himself in the areas where he needs to assert himself. He should not assert himself in the areas where he should not be asserting himself. Then he should motivate. He should motivate his people, his fellow officers, his fellow employees to achieve. And then he should also show empathy. He should feel like the people. Now, this is very important. But according to Goleman's EQ model, it's very important for empathy to be there, because he does not believe in sympathy. He does not see leader as a parent who should provide sympathy to his employees. No, he sees leader as an equal who should provide empathy to his employees. And from that comes the social skills, from that comes his resultant behavior, which leads to effective leadership. And this, my dear friends, is Goleman's emotional intelligence components. Look at this. See the relationship from Bass's transformational leadership model to Fred Lutheran's effective leader model to Goleman's EI components, all related. Now see, look at this. If you know the story, if you can, if you know this story and can relate to this, would you be even ever forgetting the stuff that we have just discussed? You would not. right? And now I will go back and study in a little more detail the Fred Luthan's model. Let me show you Fred Luthan, what he did, the background. As I told you, in 1990s, Fred Luthan published a highly insightful report on the difference between successful and effective leaders. At that point, unfortunately, it was ignored by a lot of managerial leaders, and even the behavioral leaders, they behavioral scientists, they ignored it. But today it has become so important. Now, the basic premise was based on basis transformation leadership theory. I already told you. So what Luthans did, Luthans identified successful leaders as those who have been promoted over a 5-year period, who have been successful in their careers. Okay. And he defined effective leaders as those who have achieved results for the organization consistently, beating the competition consistently. He has achieved results for the organization. Now, when he compared these two set of people, he saw surprisingly only 10% of people were successful and effective at the same time. Only see, the success effective people were successful only 10% of the times. He saw. What does it mean? What does it mean? It means that there were a lot of effective people who might not have been given the credit for the actual work that they have done. Secondly, it might also mean that they were successful leaders who were not as much effective. They might be basking in the glory of their juniors, of their employees, right? Okay, so this can be one aspect. The second aspect may be that there were some people who achieved long term as well as short term, whereas there were one set of people who only achieved short term, So those who only achieved short term were successful, but they were ineffective leaders. But those who achieved long term as well as short term, they were successful as well as effective. So these were successful but ineffective leaders. These were successful but effective leaders, right? And look at this. If a successful effective leader is running an organization, people would be happier, people would not leave the organization, they would be motivated, all of these things would happen. Whereas if a successful leader is ineffective, short term goals would be achieved, but people would not be happy, people would leave the retention would be very low, right? Okay, so these were the differences between successful and effective leader. Now, today, if you look at Luthan's findings, they are very relevant to even the managerial derailment research. Now, this is not a part of your syllabus, but I'm still doing it because, see, syllabus is just to give you pointers, right? But then the questions may be beyond it also. So, because I had picked up this particular topic, I thought that I would give you a broad and an all-inclusive idea about this topic, that is successful and effective leadership. So Luthan's finding were very consistent with the management derailment research. Now, what is management derailment research? Now, management derailment research says that there are very high potential candidates who are very high flying candidates who can do very well, they can impress others, but because they cannot build their teams, they cannot motivate their teams, they cannot achieve superior results consistently over a long period of time. And management derailment research has also proven that why high flying CEOs come in to an organization and end up bankrupting an organization. Right, and it was so related to the 2007-8 financial crisis in United States and Europe, because most of the financial institutions were headed by high flying CEOs and CFOs, but still they failed. Why did they fail? Because they were focusing on successful leadership candidates, not effective leadership candidates. So this is the background, this is the knowledge that you needed to answer this question. Would you be using all the data that I gave to you in answering the question? No. Just take up the relevant ones and you are done. So write an essay on the following topic in not more than 250 words. Right. So the topic is, a successful leader is always an effective leader. Do you agree with this statement? I have given you the concept, I have given you the background, the data. Now attempt at writing the answer. Only 250 words, not more than that. We don't need long answers. Just a short 250 words, 260, 270 if you may, but not more than that. And write it within 15 to 20 minutes. Okay? Right? Chalo, your time starts now. Done? You have done it? Now, let me attempt at writing this particular answer. See, what would I take? In the concepts, I saw that I now know for sure that successful leader and an effective is not always an effective leader. But do not start off with writing a successful leader is not always an effective leader. No, don't put the conclusion at the start. That's something that you should always remember. Never put the conclusion at the start in questions like this. Conclusion should be at the end. What you feel is not important. Why you feel is important. So first, your introduction, your body should talk about the why. And at the end, your conclusion should talk about the what. And then it would be justified. So your intro, your body should all talk about why successful leader is different than effective leader. And then when you conclude that therefore I do not feel that a successful leader is always an effective leader, then it is clear to everyone. So this is one thing that I am giving you. Remember it always. A lot of people make a mistake. They first state their stand. Don't do that. Stating your stand is not important until unless you have given the background, the support to it. Okay, so let's look at the essay now. So what are the data I would pick up for? See, I would pick up the Fred Lutherans experiment, and I would also pick up the differences that I showed to you, that a successful leader is successful in short term, and effective leader is successful in both short term as well as long term. So let's look at the answer, right? So to decide whether a successful leader is always an effective leader, let us first understand the differences between the two. For this, we will take help from Fred Lutherans' research and also compare the elements that are associated with these two kinds of leader. So look at this. The intro should be direct to the point. Don't try to make beautiful with quotation intros. Don't try that. You know, a lot of people are, I'm saying, are suggesting that. Please don't go into that trap. Because see, when you want to create a quotation for every answer, you would be hard pressed to find relevant quotations for it. You know, I don't think any of you is a collector of quotation. Your habit is to collect quotation. And if you are not, then just mugging up 150 quotations would not give you an idea to use which relevant quotation where. Rather, you should focus on the concepts, on your ideas, on the clarity of communication, on your articulation, and you would see how beautiful the answers would be. Let me show this to you. Let me show this to you. Right. So this is the introduction. So in introduction, I made it very clear that I am going to take two approaches, and on the basis of it, I would decide. And I made it very clear that I'm not going to decide now. Let me give you the data first, and then I'll decide. Okay. So Fred Lutherans' research first. Fred Lutherans did a research on these two aspects of leadership in 1990s. He built upon Bass's transformational leadership theory and conducted his research on two separate groups of people. I'm sorry, I typed this wrong. I will just change this. One here it would be transformational, and one here it would be groups. Okay, right. So these two errors are there. Next, he identified successful leaders as those who had rapidly been promoted over a 5-year period, and effective leaders as those who had achieved results that consistently beat the competition. Okay, so now I've given what is a successful leader according to Fred Lutherans and an effective leader according to Fred Lutherans. He found only 10% of the managers in this study to be both successful and effective. Right? So I've just stated whatever I had taught you. Just now I had taught you the concept of successful and effective leadership. I just stated it verbatim. I had just stated it, just not verbatim, but in a way I have just organized it in a way and stated it. You could have done that too, right? Now, next. Now let us look at the associated elements of these next para of these two kinds of leader. Now I am going to the next para where I would be taking the elements that are associated with these two kinds, where I had told you that a successful leader is successful in the short term and effective in the long term, right? So an effective leader is a good team player. His subordinates are happy and hence retention is high. He has, these are the elements of effective leader. He has a proper successor planning. This I did not state to you, but I just put it down when I was writing it, because that's also an aspect of it. His efforts direct towards short term as well as long term achievement of organization's objectives, both short term and long term. On the other hand, these elements, here it would be elements may or may not be associated with a successful leader. So these elements may or may not be associated with a successful leader. Successful leader achieves short-term target surely, but the other elements are not necessary for a leader being considered successful. I'll replace it to be leader to be considered successful. If a successful leader has these elements, then he is an effective successful leader. If not, then he is an ineffective successful leader. Okay? Right? See? So simply, these were simple words, simple sentences, just the concept that we have learned, we have put it into writing. Now, so based on both Fred Lutherans' observation and comparison of elements associated with both, we can infer, here it should be, can infer that a successful leader is not always an effective leader. Done. See, last line conclusion. Based on whatever we have discussed, we have now decided that he is a successful leader is not always an effective leader. Right? Okay. Now see. This kind of answers can be written within 15 minutes. This kind of answers can be written without being necessary for you to be extraordinarily articulate. In simple, straightforward manner, you just need to state the concepts that you have learned and that's done. Organization obviously is necessary. The way I had organized the body, that first I'll talk about the Fred Lutherans and then I'll talk about the elements associated with them. So that was important, right? But that would come as you would write more, that would come. But look at this. Was this not possible for you to write? And now tell me, if someone reads this particular answer, would we have any doubt about what my stand is, what I want to say about these two kinds of leadership and what my knowledge about these kind of leadership is? So my knowledge about leadership is not questionable now. The successful and effective leadership is not questionable now because I have clearly demonstrated it through my answer. Right? Okay? Okay? So this was a sample answer for you for a question that we had chosen from a previous year paper. So now that I had given this to you, now you might be, or you must be feeling comfortable and confident about the approach that you are to take. It's not much. If your concepts are clear, it's not much at all, my dear friends. You would manage it very, very easily. Take it, yes, but you need to practice. You need to write a lot of questions, answers to a lot of questions, right? This is a new thing, na? So therefore, your ability to articulate, to form, to organize the paragraphs, that would need a little bit of practice, right? So there is nothing to panic, but there is a lot of things to do. So focus on the things that needs to be done rather than focusing on the idea that this is different and therefore we should panic, right? And things would fall into place. Okay? And you saw that description is nothing but application of your own concepts. Articulation is important, no doubt about it, but that can be managed through writing simply and directly, as we did. Whatever I taught to you, I wrote it inside there. So that is something that you can also do. So whoever has studied with me would know that we always learn through stories, na? Right? So those stories would now come in handy because you would get points. Even if you do not remember the actual points, you would remember the story, and from the story you would pick in some points and then post it and then articulate it and write your answer. Take it, right? And important is to make a structure before you start answering the question. Like I made a structure that first I would talk in the intro, and then after the intro, Fred Lutherans, and then the associated elements, and then conclude. So that structure should be clear in your mind before you start writing. That would take hardly another 1 or 2 minutes extra, but that would make your answers very effective. Okay, right? So hope you have enjoyed this lecture and learned from this lecture. As we are giving you so much to do, we are interacting with you. I hope that you are following each one of our lectures, because those would be very, very important, and you would gain a lot of insight to this exam and what you need to do for these exams. So keep following and keep doing the necessary things that needs to be done from your end. Okay, so that will be all for today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.